Hello, and welcome to your weekly dose of strength. I want to read to you a story that transpires in the life of Jesus Christ shortly after he rises from the dead. This is just after the resurrection. Jesus has been crucified and now he has been raised from the grave. And he shows himself to his disciples. He comes to a room where they're all assembled and they see him and they're overjoyed to see him. But there's one person in the room who's missing, and his name is Thomas. Thomas doesn't see Christ when he comes, and when Thomas comes back to the room, the disciples tell him that Jesus was just here, and we just saw him. And Thomas says, unless I can see the print of the nails in his hand, I will not believe. And so the Bible says in John chapter 20, verse number 26, and after 8 days again, his disciples were within the room, and Thomas was with them. Then came Jesus again, the doors being shut, and stood in the midst of them and said, Peace be unto you. Then said he to Thomas, Reach here your finger and behold my hands. Reach in your hand and thrust it into the wound in my side. Do not be faithless, but believing. Jesus showed proof of his life, his love, our redemption, by the scars that he bore in his hands and in his side. I've shared with our church that many people have asked me about the scar on my forehead. Why haven't I changed it, or why haven't I corrected it, or why haven't I covered it up? And I could have many years ago. Chose not to do it because this scar is authentically who I am. Early on in my life, when I was a child, I was involved in an accident. And in that accident, in a car, my forehead literally cracked the windshield in front of me. And it left this horrible gash with a lot of scar tissue growing on the inside and cysts that would form. And it caused problems for many years of bleeding and the cyst and the scar tissue and the pain that came along with it. And so as a result, early in my teenage years, I had to go to the doctor to try and get this assessed and taken care of. And much to our pleasure, we learned that there wasn't deep trauma. It was internal scars, internal cysts, and they just needed to be removed. And the removing of them created this scar. And I've thought about changing the scar, but would not do it because the scar reminds me that God was faithful to me. In an accident that could have taken my life, God used that accident to be one of the things that defined my life. Our scars are meant to make us better. Years ago, I wrote something about scars, and I just want to share it with you and pray that it is a blessing to you. Wounded, bruised, and battered, you and I carry many scars. We all bear the marks of the battles we have fought and the tears we have shed. Even the many regrets that sometimes scar the hidden face of our conscience. It is absolutely impossible to make it through life without bearing any scars. So tell me, what do your scars say? What valiant story do they tell? What memories do your scars conjure up? For many people, their scars justify their sorrow. It tells them of what they lost and the pains they experienced. But may I challenge you to see your scars differently, to assign to them a different narrative. Our scars do not tell us of our defeats. They remind us of our victories. Scars are the very evidence that healing has taken place. If our wound didn't heal, there would be no scar and the injury would remain. Thank God for your scars. They mean you survived. Yes, they may be unsightly, and yes, they may still be tender, but the great and enduring story that they tell is that you are a survivor. Not many have overcome what you have overcome. Your scars are there to prove it. Maybe it was an illness that didn't rob you of your spirit. Or perhaps it was a loss that didn't take from you your will to live. Or maybe it was some grave mistake or lapse in judgment that altered the course of your life, but it didn't dismiss the promise of your destiny. All of our scars are messengers of God, left on our souls to remind us that it was He who carried us through our darkest nights. Even Jesus still has His scars. When He rose from the dead, the Father did not relieve Him of the nail piercings in His hands and in His feet. Yes, He is even now seated on the throne in heaven, with the scars of His passion still marked in His body. But of course, we have no need to be saddened at all by His scars. Quite the contrary. His scars tell the story of our forgiveness. His scars tell the story of our redemption. His scars tell the story of our freedom. Let your scars not cause you regrets, but let them be proof of your victory. Let the story that they tell be the story of your victory and your survival. Yes, they may remind you that you went through pain, but they also remind you that you overcame by the blood of the Lamb and by the word of your testimony. Well, that's true about scars, my scars and your scars. That God has uniquely allowed us to go through the wounds that we've gone through so that it may bring a power, a strength, a resilience, a tenacity to who we are as individuals. I am the product of what my scars have reminded me of. The challenges I face, the difficulties I've had, the storms I've had to overcome, every single scar reminds me that God has been faithful in my life. What about you? Stop hating the scars. Let the scars remind you that you won, you overcame, you were not defeated, that this is in your past, and look at how it has made you so much better. We grow from our scars. That's why God lets us keep them, so we don't forget His faithfulness. My prayer is that you will let your scars cause you to grow in your faith. God bless. We'll see you next week.